I want to talk about philosophy, being a woman versus being a man. And I also want us to remind ourselves that it's very reductive to think that human beings, billions of us, live within some binary of man or woman. So just keep that in mind. I saw this Instagram post that said, no woman is born of a man's rib. Every man is born of a woman's womb. One of patriarchy's oldest lies is the crowning of the father as the life giver. I think there's something to this that's interesting. I was just talking to somebody about this, and they're like, don't men have one extra rib than a woman? And I was like, no. I used to believe that too because I was literally raised with the Bible. Do you know that? Do you know I lived a significant portion of my life thinking that men had one less rib than a woman because Adam gave his rib to Eve to be created? That's not true. That's literally not true. And when you realize there are adult people on the planet that genuinely just heard this as kids and thought it was true, it's not true. And so you realize like, oh, what is my life? Like, what is my life? Like, do I even know anything? Like, do I actually even know anything? And it takes so long to deconstruct from religion. It takes so long to deconstruct. That's why I'm very empathetic to where people start from and how they end up places. Because like, we are not all starting off with the same amount of information. We're just not. This is one of those other ones that really annoys me because we keep saying it, but it's not as proven as people think. Here's Scott Galloway. We just do not like this man.
Continue to thrive, which is a great thing. But why aren't men thriving? Women continue to thrive, which is a great thing. But why aren't men thriving equally or at the same pace?
Biologically, men mature later. Their prefrontal cortex is literally 18 to 24 months behind a girl's. So two seniors applying to college, a boy and a girl, 17-year-old boy and girl.
Okay, pause. Kanye's playing in the background. First of all, this is another kind of misinformation that we keep spreading. P.S. Scott Galloway is a businessman. He's a capitalist. He knows nothing about anything. But this isn't technically true, but it sounds kind of true. But it can be found slightly in some studies. Example, if you look up these studies, it's like men mature slower than women. Maybe. It's maybe. A new study confirms the suspicion that women have harbored for generations that men are slower than women. But as you read through these articles, and I read through them this morning, a lot of them are just saying that according to the studies, there might be some variation, but it seems to be if you raise them differently, things will change. Like if you actually look through, it's like, well, hold on, okay? Actually, the study participants, 121 women and 84 men ranging in age 20 to 82 years, underwent PET scans to measure the flow of oxygen and glucose in their brains. For each person, the researchers determined the fraction of sugar committed to the Brittany, aerobic, I can't even say this, glycolysis in various regions of the brain. They trained a machine learning algorithm to find a relationship between age and the brain metabolism by feeding it into men's ages and brain metabolism data. Then the researchers entered women's brain's metabolism data into the algorithm and directed the program to calculate each woman's brain age from its metabolism. The algorithm yielded brain ages on average 3.8 years younger than the women's chronological ages. The researchers also performed the analysis in reverse. They trained the algorithm on women's data and applied it to men's. This time, the algorithm reported that men's brains were 2.4 years older than their true ages. The average difference in calculated brain age between men and women is significant and reproducible, but it is only a fraction of the difference between any two individuals. It is stronger than many sex differences that have been reported, but it's nowhere near as big of a difference as some sex differences, such as height. So it's like, yes, it's there, but it's not like that, like you're sitting there and you're saying, you know what I mean? Like, oh, all of the men are all of the behind of all of the women. No, some men, some women, some people, some variations. Like you're now jumping on this whole bandwagon of being like, why are men behind in colleges? Men have been told not to go to college. You are telling men every day on these podcasts not to go to college. You are literally telling men college is gay. It's for girls. Don't get these degrees. Don't go into college. And you literally are saying, why aren't men going to college? Hello? And then what are we telling women? Women are saying, don't depend on a man. Go to college, get an education, get a career. And so women are like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So like, again, men have always dominated college. They've always dominated college because it wasn't a space for women. Men have always dominated college. They were also majority of teachers until women started being like, I'm gonna start doing this. And the men put up a fight. They fucking argued with us. They're still arguing us to this day. Okay, that's why men with high school diplomas literally think they're smarter than women with PhDs. And I'm not saying that they can't be. I'm saying sit down, okay? So again, Scott Galloway coming here, being this voice for men and doing his little grift is literally pushing men further from really understanding themselves. And that's what I'm saying. I'm so sick of the way we hear something and it sounds good, so we ride with it, okay? A few things that I know, this sounds so crazy, but when we consume information, we don't even realize how wrong it is because of the way it was taught to us. Another one that I learned from the Bible that I learned wasn't true. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, I thought Prince of Egypt was legit. Like, yeah, how it happened. Like, I was like, yeah, the like Egyptians enslaved the Jews specifically and they hated the Jews. And then Moses went out into the desert. There is no historical evidence that Jews were specifically targeted en masse to build the pyramids or to build like Egypt or to build like, yes, some slaves or enslaved people were Jews, but there's no historical evidence outside of the Bible that like these things happened. And I legit was way too old when I realized that. I was legit way too old when I realized that. Okay. What else? Tiananmen Square, how do you say that in China? How you spell that word? How you even say it? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The tragedy that happened in the like 40 years ago and in the 80s or 90s or whatever, 89, whatever. Tiananmen. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? When I learned about this, okay, do you guys know this? When I learned about this, I have a relative who's a teacher, and they go, I went to China and we weren't allowed to talk about it, but I didn't hear them say it themselves. My mother told me. My mom goes, oh yeah, your cousin went to China and she wasn't even allowed to ask about it. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, there's so much propaganda. They're not allowed to talk. I just learned. Literally, I was reading about it because I was so confused. I saw a TikTok about it and I was like, this can't be true. I'm reading about it and I'm like, this is not what I was taught. Like when I was reading about it, like it didn't exactly happen in the square. It kind of happened around. There was a lot of like different parts moving into it. And I'm sitting here like, fuck, like I need to check everything I was ever taught in my life. And that's the point is like when we learn things, we're learning it from the narrative of America. We're learning it from our parents who are conservative. We're learning it from patriarchy. And so they have to tell it in a way that makes us feel a particular way about it. So like, even as I'm reading about it, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like what's happening in Iran as well. Like in Iran, like this really horrible thing is happening, of course, because men are doing it. This really horrible thing is happening. But the way America is saying it, the way Trump is saying it is like, oh, these Iranians, they need us to save them. These students want to protest, but their government is killing them. And I'm like, well, what are we doing with our students? Like we can see in Venezuela how America is telling us a story about how they need to be liberated. And we can also see the correlation to the Iraq war because my family is Iraqi, right? And I remember the way that my Iraqi relatives were explaining why they need the intervention from America, but how it just fucked over the region 30 years later and how they all regret 200,000 Iraqis died in the Iraq war. Okay, not to mention the American soldiers that didn't need to be there. So like when we learn history and we learn information and then we decide to marry ourselves to this information with no update, it's going to lead us in a completely bad direction. Like thinking men are biologically, permanently slower than women and quote, that's why they're behind. Instead of recognizing that that's not exactly what that study means. That's not exactly what that's a misunderstanding of the study, right? So here's the answer they're giving, why are men behind women? Oh, it's biological. No. Why do women shop more than men? It's biological. No. Like everything is biological, but that's not the answer. You're not actually getting the answer. Okay. So here's something I want to talk about. Let's go to Britt Hartley to move forward with this. Okay. What is psychologically and religiously going on with women? Let's talk about it.
What is psychologically and religiously going on with the women who find themselves protecting very powerful, very problematic men? Now, we know psychologically in general that when people experience threat or chaos or uncertainty, that they gravitate towards very strong leadership, punitive justice, very black and white moral certainty, and clear hierarchy. And that's true of most neurotypical humans. Now, what Christianity does on top of that is teaches you that God is male and sovereign and all-powerful and punishing, and that the safest place to be is under the umbrella of protection under that God. And what this does for women who are raised in Christianity is that it encodes in your psychology very early on that the strong father protector is the person you are most safe with. So the women who wear cross necklaces and find themselves standing in front of Trump and other powerful men or Epstein file men in order to protect them, from the outside that seems like a very precarious place to stand as a woman. However, when we get down into their nervous system, these women truly feel like regulated, nervous system regulated by finding themselves in that position. And one of the reasons for that, there's many other reasons too, but one of the reasons for that is because Christianity coded into them very early on that yes, God is scary and can send floods and punish people, but the safest place to be is on the side of God. Now, when the women who protect patriarchal systems get discarded, three things can happen psychologically. The first of which is just they double down and they intensify their loyalty. And Christianity is going to give them a lot of language to do this because there's always this idea that you are being persecuted for Christ's sake. The second,
right there, I want to pause it. This is my mother. My mother is a woman who like really believes like every hardship, every time there's a group that has a discrimination, like when BLM was happening, she's like, what about Catholics? I was like, what about it? And she was like, don't you think our churches are being targeted? And I was like, are they? And she'll be like, oh, look at this story about a man who came and shot his priest. I was like, did you look into the story? Why did it happen? You look into the story and it was an angry, disgruntled man who was mad at a priest because the priest told his wife to divorce him and he was mad about it. It has nothing to do with persecution. They don't know the difference between you getting shot because of something other than you being targeted because of your ethnicity, gender, something else. Like they don't know so then they take on the idea of being persecuted. My mother, who doesn't believe in any shape, way, or form that Christians ever killed people for not being Christian, doesn't believe the Crusades was actually bad because Jesus actually inspired the Crusades to protect us, and then that the Christians were following God's word, and that was actually like good and noble and all of these other things. And so what they do is they create like talk about a victim mentality, right? It's authentic. Like she really believes it. She really feels, my sister said this the other day, Mom never looks happier than when she talks about Jesus. My mom never looks more calm and more peaceful than when she's talking about Christ. And I find that annoying, but it's true. She gets dysregulated very quickly. I think she's autistic. Who knows? She gets dysregulated so quickly with a lot of things. Anytime anything is outside of her religion, she does get like, and she really, and keep in mind, guys, she's a volunteer. She does charity work. She has a whole ass community. She's got best friends. She does book club with her girlies. My mom she's got a whole community that also all have great jobs, all have great kids, all reinforce their beliefs. They all have good families. They all live in nice houses. Like she lives in a very beautiful neighborhood. Like, do you know what I'm saying? So like, this is my mom's joy. I don't agree with it. And I think she could be more in sync with her joy if she was a different person. But the person that she is right now, this is my mother's fulfillment. And she is being fulfilled, right? This is my mother's life. So I can't tell her, oh, you should leave that life. I would say if your goal is to reach heaven and you want to prioritize Jesus over everybody else, including your kids, then okay. Yeah, do that. Right? Like that is what I would tell you to do. But that is what she is doing as well. Right? And so what I try to do again is to say to her, I don't need you to be different than who you are. I need to accept who you are. We need to accept people for who they are instead of wanting them to be different. Because wanting them to be different is like, it's an attachment to the outcome that's unnecessary for them and for you, right? Okay, back to Britt Hartley.
Option is just they redirect that allegiance to the new male strong figure, because even though maybe their loyalty to a certain person has failed, that nervous system thing is already in place, and they're just looking for the next strong male authority to be able to be loyal to. And the least common, which is unfortunate, but the least common psychological response for when these women are discarded by the very system that they're trying to protect is that they'll deconstruct the hierarchy, which is the least common, but the most psychologically transformative. Because admitting betrayal means that you're going to have to admit that the system is unsafe, that your judgment is wrong, that you may have actually caused harm in others. It's an identity collapse. I mean, there's a lot of psychological things going on that the brain is going to try to avoid. And this is one of the reasons that Christianity is more dangerous than it seems at surface level, because it is encoding, especially to little girls, that the safest you will feel is under the umbrella of this very old, scary Old Testament God and very problematic, powerful, authoritarian men. And when you encode that in your nervous system before you're even rational, it can drive behavior for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And that's why my mom has a tendency to protect the predators in the family, or tends to empathize with the men more than the women. She also believes in the bullshit pseudoscience that Scott Galloway is saying, which is like women are smarter than men. We're more developed. We're more ahead of men. So we're now responsible for what men do because we're smarter and better than them. But also, while we're smarter and better than them, they also are the head of the household and should lead. Because it's not within a woman's nature to lead. It is within a woman's nature to lead under the guidance of a man, Jesus Christ. Like Joan of Arc wasn't the leader of an army. She was the follower of Christ who led the army in his name. My mom will say, why can't I be a feminist? And I'll say, Mom, you can be a TERF. And she goes, no, I want to be a regular feminist. I was like, okay, well, I guess, you're kind of like anti-women's choice though. And she's like, but what about St. Esther? And what about St. Joan of Arc? And what about all these great women? Yeah, all those great women that only get the credit through the guidance of Jesus Christ. Like, would those women have been successful without Jesus? My mom's like, no, they needed God. I was like, so they needed a man to be successful. And she was like, well, yeah, we all need Jesus. We all need Jesus. You know what I mean? So it's like when we have this conversation, we have to understand where a person is coming from, and then understand how stories being told to us change our perception of reality. Going back to this original TikTok, no woman is born of a man's rib. Every man is born of a woman's womb. That's a little transphobic, so we'll talk about that. But one of patriarchy's oldest lies is crowning the father as the life giver. One of the biggest lies of the world is also falling into this narrative that simply the bodies we're born into can encompass the lived experience of us as a consciousness. I was just watching Dr. K this morning, and I was really upset. He wanted Andrew Huberman's podcast because out of all the people, Andrew Huberman has been outed as like a chronic abuser. He's a very evil man. And so that was very upsetting, and I was annoyed. And I understand he's like working with an agent. His agent books him, but like, anyways, I hate that. But I think what Dr. K said on it was really powerful. And whatever Dr. K was saying, I loved. And secretly, I kind of think he hates Huberman because he was not vibing with him. But like, that's me projecting probably. But he talked about in his practice of spiritualism that, you know, they believe you are more than your body or more than your brain. Like, you aren't your hand, right? Right? Like, if I cut off my hand, I'm still me. If I cut off my brain, I'm still me. Dr. K believes this. I believe this. This is what I believe. I think you're more than your brain and more than your body and more than everything else. But for a lot of people, like a lot of the boy podcasts, they do think like you're specifically just your brain, which is why a lot of it leads into ableism and IQ and eugenics, because they think like if you have a bad brain, or your brain is disabled in some aspect, they'll say like, oh, you are, versus I don't think you are. I don't think your brain reflects who you are as a person. Like, I don't think my hand reflects who I am as a person. You know, they're the same thing. But this is a big deviation between a lot of these practices and conversations that we're having, which is why I wanted to talk or use Britt Hartley to have these conversations, because she has a few videos I want to show you about gurus, about, quote, women's practices like magic and stuff, and also the science behind a lot of these practices and why they're really, really good for you. Okay, so check this video out. This is about New Age and gurus and kind of maybe the end of gurus.
New Age the collapse of performative New Age spirituality. And the lesson here is that it's teaching us intelligent evaluation and discernment. And what I mean is, as more gurus, teachers, influencers, and other famous people you see online preach about spirituality, but then eventually get exposed for their unintegrated shadow parts, the real metric to spirituality becomes undeniable. And this was taught to me by my teacher, who said that one's measure of spirituality is not reflected by what the world sees, but it is measured by their character development.
This is true, and I'm so proud of us for just not instantly anymore trusting a man because they went to Bali for 3 months. Here's an example. So I ran to the comment section and was not disappointed. Hey babe, wake up, a new performative spiritual male just dropped. You look like a cult leader. Hey, I don't know who I am. Let me cosplay spirituality and spiritual awakening. Superiority complex in another font. Now, I am not saying that you are not allowed to go to Bali and have a life-changing experience and then change the church.
It says, I help coaches, healers, and yogis make 5-figure months for absolute freedom. Capitalism with spirituality. You, listen, I will say this every time I say this, that if you take my advice, you will not get rich, but you will be liberated. I have no idea how to get rich, but I know how to get liberated. You know what I mean? Anytime you wrap in money with spiritual liberation, boo. That's why capitalism does ruin everything. And that's why I say, like, look, if I knew how to get rich, trust me, I tell you. But I don't think you can truly do introspective work, extrospective work, and focus on money. I really don't think so. I think you have to really have a deep sense of, and this goes back to the Dr. K. Huberman thing. Dr. K, I think, has done this work. He's slow to fame. He's slow to rise. He's been on much more podcasts now. I'm happy for him successfully. And I know it took a long time to get here compared to other people in his groups who moved a lot faster, because I think he's doing the work. Now, Huberman is exactly the red flag you want to look for. Huberman is this really evil, fucked up guy who came into the space with his, I went to Stanford bullshit and talking about, how I know science and I know things. This is Huberman for those who forgot. And I used to watch Huberman, right? And then I was like, man, he's kind of giving pseudoscience. He's kind of giving like manosphere. And then more than 5 women, I think 7, maybe 5, 6, I don't remember. We read his article. It's behind a paywall, so I paid to read it. I read part of it on stream, right? If you remember, he not only was cheating with a multitude of women, he not only told women that not to tell anybody about their relationship because he has stalkers on the internet, he was doing IVF treatment with one of the women. He was meeting people's families. I mean, he is a deep abuser, right? So I am very fucking annoyed that Dr. K decided to do a collaboration with Huberman. And I don't want to assume everybody knows what I know, but I also think whoever his agent is should do the work. If you have an agent, they need to do the research about who you're talking to, because this is fucked up. Like Andrew Huberman, I know he has a big podcast. I understand he's got a ton of subscribers. He's fucked up. Okay. And with that said, I do think Dr. K should maybe even go on a Joe Rogan versus because Joe Rogan is a conspiracy theorist, but he hasn't fucking abused women, as far as we know, versus is different with Huberman, who has been outed by his victims. Right. So this is the example where, remember when Huberman was like, I spread my asshole for the sun because it's for my health. Huberman was like cold plunges and spiritual practices and yoga. He is exactly the wolf in sheep's clothing that Britt Hartley is talking about, this faux guru, this I'm a man with a degree from Stanford, so listen to me, but he's not actually, his life is not a product of his practice. Okay? You cannot say I'm practicing this thing and then the fruits of your labor be 5 victims. You know what I'm saying? Okay? It's insane.
Trajectory of your life. You are allowed to do that. You're just not allowed to 3 months later say, I'm going to help you make 5
Just at a degree, he's a neuroscientist at Stanford.
figures. And
see how that doesn't matter? See how it doesn't matter that he's a neuroscientist at Stanford didn't keep him from fucking abusing women?
Your spiritual foundation that you're going to teach me. And when you get pushback calling out your shadow because you have haters, just say to them, this is the year that I made the most money. And I feel like 10 years ago, we didn't really see this. We really trusted that if you're a man and went to India and did some meditation stuff, that you have something to teach us.
Which is why Jay Shetty was outed as a false guru, because he claimed he practiced, but he didn't. Versus Dr. K, he did years at a temple in India, years. And he was rejected from the practice. They said, like, I don't think this is for you. Versus, like, that's what I'm saying. The difference between someone doing it to put it on their resume so people take them seriously or they lie about it versus the difference between somebody who genuinely went through it. Now, Britt Hartley and I collabed and we talked about this, how like we went through something. So it brought us to philosophy. It brought us to my levels is a direct result of something I genuinely went through, which is why I'm taking my time and being very serious about how I talk about it. And, you know, versus a lot of these men, they're just doing it because it sounds good. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I do 100,000 push-ups. I eat bull testicles. If they make it sound exaggerated and extreme, people will think it's more real. Because they'll be like, whoa, you're so disciplined. I could never do that. I can't even stop scrolling on TikTok. You must know what you're talking about because you say you wake up at 5 a.m. and eat bull testicles. It's like, that's what I'm saying. You keep blaming billionaires and elites, but I think you're stupid. That was mean. I'm mean. Listen, okay? Sorry, my bad. My bad. You are naive. And the fact that you're so naive is really on you at this point, girl. Come on now. Come on now.
And I'm so glad that we are collectively healing from this. Now you may be saying, Britt, isn't that a little hypocritical?
Hold on, Britt. And then what's worse is you get the Scott Galloways being like, why are men behind women? It's because men are biologically inferior because they're 2 years behind women. That's the problem. You're so fucking susceptible to every fucking thing you hear instead of actually being like, wait, I need to research on that. Where'd you get that information?
Don't you also sell courses? But there's a difference in his courses and my courses. My courses come from 20 years of experience studying religion and spirituality, and I have a degree in teaching. And none of my coaches...
And she has a master's degree in theology.
My courses will help you make money.
Exactly.
Not a single one is going to help you make more money. My courses are like, let's do some shadow work and meet the part of you that you're the most ashamed of.
Exactly.
Let's do some death work and really face death without any kind of buffer. These courses are hard. My nihilism course is hard. It's challenging. It's going to bring up a lot of stuff. These courses, one, aren't going to make you any more money, and two, don't do any kind of spiritual bypassing in order to avoid the problem. It just hopefully gives you some tools and resources for facing the actual scary problem. But this is just something I'm really happy to see because I don't remember it being like this 10 years ago where we had instant skepticism towards people like this, and I'm glad that we're seeing it.
Definitely.
And I've never been more happy to see a comment section just do everything that I would have said, and then I don't have to. It's just so great. It's an actual optimistic sign that people are getting more discerning in their search for spiritual guidance, and I think that that's a good thing.
I think it is a good thing. I think it's also important, like, that people understand that there is a difference between practicing something you believe in and practicing something you know is good for you, right? So look at this video from Britt Hartley.
When is astrology a tool and when is it a religion? As of today, we have entered Mercury in retrograde, this one in Pisces, and if you use the movement of the planets as a way to check in with different aspects of your psyche, that is a tool. So if you use this time because Mercury is asking you to go inward, that's a tool. And if you're using this time to tap into the stories that you're telling yourself, letting go of things that you feel like you need to let go of, that's absolutely a tool. And this right here is the key moment for me when it turns from a tool into a religion and when it becomes problematic. Because when you say what to expect with Mercury in retrograde, computer crashes, missed flights, typos and emails, texts from your ex, then that is actually a truth claim. You are making a metaphysical truth claim about the nature of reality. You are saying because of the movements of these planets that scientifically you are going to have more typos in your emails. And this is a part when we do studies to follow up on things like this, we just don't have evidence for this. So what happens is because the tool works of the inner exploration that you're doing with astrology and doing with the archetype work and doing with your psyche, because that can work for you and be very helpful, you then start to believe that the truth claims around astrology are true. And that is exactly what religion does. That's no different than a Mormon saying, because, you know, this religion is benefiting my life, therefore the historical truth claims of the Book of Mormon are true. And it's like, no, that doesn't have to mean that. So if you're using this month to slow down and reflect and revisit old issues and learn to trust your intuition more, like, fantastic, have at it. But if you are using those experiences to claim things as capital T true, I would really beg you to look at the most recent large study that we did on astrology. We've had lots of studies on astrology, but this one was different because it was designed by astrologers so that they could help decide what a fair test would look like, and it helped remove any anti-astrology bias. The astrologers were given detailed personal profiles of real people, like as in-depth as possible, and then were given 5 charts to see if they could match their life to the chart. And they could do this no better than chance. Not only that, the ones who were actually professionals in astrology who had been doing this for 30 years, they believed that they did better than chance, and they also did worse than someone who had no expertise at all. So with Mercury in retrograde, fantastic time to do some inner work, but if you get drunk and text your ex, it is not the planet's fault.
Okay, exactly. I love using tarot. I love using astrology as a tool, but the moment you tell me it's capital T truth, reject. Okay, I like using the Bible. I like using religion. I like using everything I can as a tool. The moment you start acting like it is the explanation for why things happen, I'm over it. I'm literally so fucking over it. Like, be so fucking for real. You know what I mean? And also, I'm open to you proving with data that it is true. But until then, it's a tool. Okay, and it's a good tool, and we should keep using it. Now, Chad said, as a man, it seems like the whole online ecosystem to get rich quick schemes, gambling, investments, podcasts, and of course, it all comes back to that. Same. And I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. It's bullshit. This is perfect for the next TikTok I'm going to show you. Exactly. It cannot be money. Again, I know I've been talking about this a lot, but especially since the economy is so hard right now, money cannot liberate your consciousness, your spirit. It can only pay your rent. And I know you're in survival mode, so you think, well, all I got to do is pay my rent. But I promise you, once you make enough money to pay your rent, you're still going to be in trouble. Because most people are suffering from a meaning crisis because they are getting college degrees. They are making money. They are buying houses, and they're still fucking lost. They are getting married and having kids, and they're unsatisfied. They're fucking unsatisfied. So it's not just money. Money is a tool. Yes, to be a whole human being, you have to have a good relationship with your financial health because we all have to eat. But it cannot be the only thing. So check out this. This is, again, Britt Hartley talking about Oprah, wealthy people, spirituality, and gurus. Once again, because Oprah infamously had promoted a lot of fucking pseudoscience, fake-ass gurus, shitty people. Oprah is a billionaire. She's a capitalist. She can't be trusted. But a lot of people trusted Oprah for many years. And so when she would support these men and promote these men, people wanted to believe these men were going to save them, right?
The reason why I am so massively blessed, the reason why I have so much grace, the reason why I have so much emotional, spiritual, physical wealth is because energetically what I've been putting out has been returned.
This is a fantastic example of how
the reason I'm a billionaire.
spiritual beliefs that don't feel like they're outright harmful can actually cause harm in a system. Because Oprah believes in like the secret and manifesting and the energy stuff, she doesn't see herself as a player in a system that she benefits from and a system that has caused harm. She gave a huge platform to John of God, who had a healing center in Brazil, but he is currently in prison. He was convicted because hundreds of women accused him of SA. Mm-hmm. She is a big reason why Deepak Chopra is a big deal in America, and we have objective evidence showing like he is a grifter. A grifter who is in the Epstein files with some really problematic stuff. So it's not surprising at all that in 2023, that when she's raising money for the Hawaii Wildlife Fund, she is doing this like she's shooting this on her property in Maui, and it is a 2,000 acre organic farm in Maui.
In Maui, she bought up 2,000 acres of land that should not have been bought up. Facebook guy did the same thing. You need to leave Hawaii alone.
And then she's asking everybody else to donate money. And all of us are looking at the visuals of this saying like, how is she doing this? Like full chest, just asking for money here. And it's because she doesn't see herself as participating in these systems. She sees that she's in a spiritual relationship with the universe, and that what she's putting out, the universe is giving back to her. And that makes her not culpable for anything that she affects in the world. So her spiritual beliefs around the law of attraction really...
Well, doesn't this move into prosperity gospel stuff where like, if I am good, Jesus will reward me. So my wealth is proof that Jesus is rewarding me.
Reduces her sense of what does it mean to be an ethical billionaire. She never has to ask herself, what does it mean that I seem to have platformed a lot of spiritual people who have caused a lot of harm, and maybe I should make an apology, or maybe I should make some changes. She doesn't have to ask herself any of those questions.
Yep.
And it's no different. I had someone on TikTok tell me that homeless people wouldn't be homeless if they just knew how to work the law of attraction. And that spiritual world, while it seems like it's harmless in the sense that it's like not doing a crusade or anything, it causes harm in the sense that it removes us from the actual systemic problems and what we should be doing about it. So in Oprah's mind, my wealth is because I put out the right energy for wealth, instead of I am unbelievably rich in a world of inequality, and my platform has caused harm sometimes, and what should I do about that? And it's just prosperity gospel over again, but with new age words. And especially when the Deepak Chopra stuff came out about Epstein, like I really wish she had said something, anything, taken any kind of responsibility for that.
Now, look, I was definitely an Oprah fan at one point in my life. I would read all of her book recommendations, which a lot of those came out to be untrue, highly exaggerated, like a million little pieces and stuff like that. But I read those books and they were impactful, and I recognize that you can't just trust it because it's on the Oprah list. I also thought it was amazing that she was a Black woman and a billionaire, because I was also a liberal capitalist, meaning that I believed that, the system was shitty, but if you learn to play in it, maybe it'd be better. And then, of course, now I'm an anti-capitalist. So it is one of those things where for a certain time in your life, you could see Oprah and be like, yes, women can do it. And yes, Black women can do it. And yes, they can be rich. But again, it's coming at the expense of so many people, which is why the idea of being an ethical billionaire and then utilizing spiritual practice as the means of proof of your, that's like Trump saying, God loves me. You know how I know God loves me? I'm a billionaire with a B, and it's like, no, he's like, God loves me. I'm the president. That's basically what Oprah is saying, that Trump he must be blessed by God, and that's why he's the president of the United States. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. Okay, one last video from Brett Hartley on this topic. Make them face the consequences of their actions. Check this out. Write their name. Rub garlic over their name and add black pepper. Okay, first of all, we making a taco? What are we doing, girl? Because that's kind of sounding yummy. Garlic and black pepper? Hello. Sounds like my breakfast. Burn it. I love a little liquid smoke. Throw ashes.
No nonsense.
Wait, what did that say? Throw ashes in the toilet?
As no nonsense spirituality, you're probably
wait. I want to see that again.
Expecting me to.
Yeah, and then throw ashes and trash or flush down the toilet.
As no nonsense spirituality, you're probably expecting me to laugh at all of that, but there is so much science behind what's going on there. We know now that rituals scientifically help your nervous system to be able to process emotions. And this works even when you know that the ritual is made up. So for example, there was two groups of people. They were both told that one person in the group would get a couple $100. They do. One of the people in the group gets a couple $100. And for one group, they just have to sit in their feelings of being disappointed that they weren't the ones who got the money. And then in the other group, they had them do a ritual. So they had to write down their feelings about disappointed. They put salt on it. They crumpled it up. They had to throw it over their left shoulder. They just totally made up a ritual. And hours later, they could see that the people who did the made-up ritual had gotten over it. They were no longer thinking about it. And the people who didn't were still kind of angsty about not winning the money. So when you look at, for example, a West African cleansing ritual, it includes this public acknowledgement, community witnessing, some gestures and things that you move through the body, and then reintegration in the group. And if you can do a ritual like that, that will help you to process guilt and shame and move forward back into the community faster than anything that we can do in cognitive behavioral therapy. The shame literally dissolves because it is seen and it is metabolized socially, and then the person is restored back into belonging. So what I think is really disappointing is that I think that both sides miss the mark, because the religions and the spiritual traditions will really feel like these rituals are tapping into something capital T true. I'm really drinking the blood of Christ and it's doing something metaphysically. Or when I do this ritual, it's because the gods think X or Y. And on the other hand, I think that the Western world and secularism and rationality and atheism, they looked at the stories around these rituals and said, this is obviously BS, and threw it all away, not realizing that so many of these rituals are still to this day more effective than things like cognitive behavioral therapy or our best kind of rational cognitive ways of processing these things. And the sweet spot in between, where you don't have to turn off rationality, which is a part of you and will lead to wholeness if you don't turn it off, is when you begin to play with these things as lowercase m magic rather than capital M magic. And that's where I think the real magic is.
So, when I was in therapy, and this is why I say vet your therapists, I did DBT, vet your therapists. I needed a therapist that understood that I was in BDSM, I was in the BDSM bubble, and I used it for spiritual, ritualistic practice. And I was able to utilize DBT into my BDSM because of the secular vanilla belief about BDSM is that it's all about sex. It's not all about sex. It is about rituals. It is about consistency. It is about structure. It is about community, right? The things we need in life to make meaning. And when I would go to therapy, I would like utilize those therapy practices in BDSM. So again, I understand that for people, BDSM is only between like, you know, the orgasm, but the orgasm never needed to exist in my BDSM for it to be good. And 99.9% of the BDSM I practiced never had an orgasm engaged or involved. I never did any sexual play. And that's not to say you're bad if you do. It's to say that we're utilizing this tool differently, because my BDSM was a spiritual practice. It was also a tool I was utilizing. It wasn't something I deeply believe in. It wasn't like I was like doms and subs or, you know, specific things that are like ordained from the BDSM gods. It was just that the practice I belonged to had a high standard for consent culture, a high standard for sobriety, a high standard for interaction. And then on top of the community expectation, my personal practice utilized a spiritual element, which kept me in ritual. And even the partners that I chose also agreed with that. They were the same. So when we engaged in our play together, it was very much around kind of play ritual, you know, like sometimes I would be furniture, and that would allow me to meditate and not think about work and not think about stresses. And I would just be like, I am a chair. I am a footstool. I am a table. And it was like a very interesting practice of like, I am. And that was really helpful. That was really what I needed, because I was, you know, working so hard, and I was just struggling with my life so hard. And even before therapy, my BDSM was the same way. So even before I started BDSM at 21, I went to therapy at 28, but I was still using it as a spiritual practice. So when I got to therapy at 28, I had to make sure my therapist understood that BDSM was not a sign that my mental health was bad, but was a tool I was using for my mental health. And it was working. Now, therapy, okay, is specific, and BDSM is certainly not a replacement for therapy, but it is therapeutic. Just like going to the gym is not a replacement for therapy, but it is therapeutic. Just like art isn't a replacement for therapy, but it is therapeutic. Just like, you know, these things can be real. Now, you can utilize in therapy these things, right? But just going to the gym alone is not going to make you understand the science of your brain and your childhood and how you got here. Just going to the BDSM dungeon and being a footstool is not going to help you understand how you got here, right? So all of this to say, I think sometimes one of the reasons why it looks like, okay, women are ahead of men, and men will come up with a silly biological quote, pseudoscience reason, you know, instead of actually recognizing the reason there's a generalization that women are ahead of men is because under patriarchy, we actually got to utilize a tool faster than other communities, male communities. We got to experience vulnerability. We have community. We have friends. We have, you know, one of the men in my life, I was like, I was talking to him and I was like, how's your friends, bro? Like, how's your friend group, you know? And they're good. You know, all the guys came together. We're good, bro. I was like, oh yeah. Like, how are they? Like, what's new in their life? You know, same shit. And I'm like, but like, what's going on? You know, he goes, oh, like some shit kind of went down. I think they're kind of struggling with work or whatever. You know how it is. And I'm like, do I know how it is? How is it? You know, what are they going through? I don't know. Just something with work. And I'm like, you know, there's like no deeper understanding of what my person is going through, my friends are going through, what like the people in my group are going through. And this isn't uncommon, you know, and that's why men are breaking down those barriers. They're trying to be more vulnerable with each other. And there has to be a line in the sand of what that looks like. But like, you know, I even know people who are like, oh yeah, I think my buddy got divorced, or so the car accident happened, or like, but they don't know the details. And I'm like, did you ask? And they're like, no, he would have told me if he wanted to. Is this a TV show? I swear to God, I've seen these TikToks and you think it's an exaggeration, and then it literally happens to you in your real life and you're like, am I on TV? Is this the Truman Show? You don't know why? You don't know why this happened? You don't know? You know, it's just like, what? Yeah, Chet says they're not trained in the art of small talk or checking in. I always remember to ask how people's families and jobs and hobbies. Same. How's life? How's the family? How's everything? And then really remember and kind of bring it up next time. Like, hey, how'd that job go? Did you get that job? Hey, how'd that thing go? You know what I mean? So I do think there is something at play here that is just obviously trained into us. And that's the point, is that though we need to dismantle patriarchy and it is an evil framework, it is also the reason why women out of survival, this is why minority groups feel like liberation comes from our communities a lot, because we find a way to survive under oppression. And I just want to make sure we balance that with understanding that not all women, that's why Britt Hartley talks about like conservative women, not all minorities. That's why certain ones like Oprah will play with billionaires and like capitalism. So you also have to make sure you're in the category of a person who's finding liberation even though oppressed, and finding community even though oppressed. And I think the thing that makes the difference is your value. If you value money, you become Oprah. If you value security and safety over everything else, you become a woman who upholds patriarchy. Because even though it's an illusion of safety and security, if you fall in line, you know, maybe you'll get some perks. It's the rebellious women, the loud women, the argumentative women that men paint as like, ugh. And may I always be an argumentative woman. You know what I mean? Even when I'm a man. So when we have these conversations, you know, there's so much that plays into this, but you have to know who you are in the story, and are the fruits of your labor good fruit? So biblical of me, but are the fruits of your labor good fruit? And it depends on what you think is good. So if you're Oprah, you might say, yeah, I'm a billionaire. Look at me. This is proof I'm doing good. And I would look at myself and say, oh my God, I must be doing the right thing. Look how stable my mental health is. Look how my money's in order. Look how my friends are in order. Look how good everyone's life. Like it felt, and this is not about me, but it did feel like the more my shit got good in my life, it felt like all of my friends and family followed. Not to say that it had anything to do with me. I do sort of believe, I have no evidence of this, that I do believe that sometimes it's just the matter of like where everybody is and how time has gone by. And also because you're all raised together, you all kind of eventually head in a direction. And look, not everyone went in that direction, but for the most part, the more I have aged, the better my life has gotten. I've noticed the better my friends' lives have gotten. Again, I don't think it has to do because my life got better. It just feels like the people I'm around also tend to be those people that for the most part, our lives got better. You know, and there's still struggle and there's still stress and there's still these things, but our lives got better. And I think that's so important. And I think this correlates with having a very strong community. And I think it's why you as an individual have to be sort of like the person in the community who does it. You can't wait around for other people to do it before you do it. And I do think you inspire people, whether it's directly or not. I'm not saying I inspired people, like really, but I'm sure somebody saw me and went, in the same way that I saw some people in my life and went, okay, I'm going to do that. We learn from one another. Okay. This is also why I always talk about how certain men have come to me over the years and said like, hey, I feel like you know something I don't know. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, what is it? And I'll tell them and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, I know. Like Shia LaBeouf yesterday. He's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's the answer for me. Oh, I'm not going to look at myself, bro. I don't think that's the answer. That is the answer. You're not willing to do the one thing you have to do, which is look at yourself and admit to yourself who you are in the story. Could Oprah even live in an existence where she could admit to herself that she's the bad guy in the story? Ain't no way. Ain't no way, you know? And like, that's so common. I'm not even blaming her. That's just what it is. She's not very different from a lot of people. Now, ironically enough, you might say, oh, she's different than everybody else because she has choice. I don't think Oprah has any more choice than somebody who works at McDonald's. I think they're the same. Because the status difference between the two isn't their money, it's their spiritual and philosophical awareness, and neither have it. Neither have a desire or assuming you can work at caveat, you can work at McDonald's and have a great life and be joyfully perfect and philosophically. I was mostly talking about the money differences. So same. You could be a person who works at McDonald's and have a great sense of joy. I don't think you can be a billionaire and have that because of the evil you have to do to get there. But I think you can be pretty wealthy. I think you can be like a millionaire. I think you could be like worth 10 million and probably be like a pretty good person. There's a lot of really ethical ways to make $10 million. There's no ethical way to make $1 billion, right? So when we have these conversations, there's a little bit of nuance that I'm going to need you guys to like help like do the think as well as I'm talking. But I do think there is something here that says, if I was to look at myself in the mirror and face myself, what could I do? And I also think that's why it's hard when I do criticize people, anyone, Taylor Swift, Hassan, whoever I'm criticizing, and it sounds like I'm saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm just saying, why are you in this position and you're not saying something? I'm saying, why are you in this position and you're not doing something? You know what I mean? Like, why are you? So the question is, it's serious. Why aren't you doing it? Give me the answer. And the same way that all of us have to ask that question to ourselves, hey, why aren't you doing the laundry? Why aren't you cleaning the house? Why aren't you doing your 10 push-ups? Why aren't you doing it? There's a reason. Do you know the reason? And then what do you do after that? You know? So again, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I do think there is just this obnoxious patriarchal framework that a lot of us were raised in, right? No woman, this Instagram post says, is born of a man's rib, and every man is born of a woman's womb. One of patriarchy's oldest lies is crowning the father as the life giver. Like, truly, that is the insidiousness of patriarchy, is that it erases women's accomplishments and rewrites history. And then on top of us trying to deconstruct patriarchy, we also think the counter to that is just saying women are better than men. Women aren't better than men, but we've chosen to be. We're not inherently better than men. But as a group, we are collectively moving in a direction that says, oh, we better be because these men suck. We're actually looking at men and saying, like, we can't be them, right? We got to be better than that because, like, that really sucks. Like, we don't want to do that, right? Now, not every woman, but a big horde of women are like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm waiting for men to collectively look at the structure of what it is to be a man and go, we're not going to do that, right? Because that kind of fucking sucks. But they're not doing that yet. Okay? They're just not doing it yet. So when they're ready, then we can have those conversations. Listen, I worked in feminist liberal bubbles in Seattle, and men would come up to me and be like, why don't you guys care about men? Why can't I was like, join us, help us. Do you want to volunteer with us? They're like, no. And I was like, okay, well, do you want to help march with us? They're like, no. And I was like, do you want to do anything? They're like, no. And I was like, I was so confused. I was like in my mid-20s. I was genuinely so perplexed. I was like, hey, here's a space for you. Come hang out with us. We literally invited them in and they were like, oh, I'm not going to do anything though. And I was like, they just wanted a space to complain, which I get it. That's why I say don't complain, but vent. I don't like complainers. Do not complain to me about your life. You can vent, but you cannot complain because I can't stand people who complain and do nothing about their life. Maybe you want to complain, pay a therapist because at least they're getting paid. Okay? All right. That's it for that topic. That's all I wanted to talk about. Thank you for being here.